So let me take this opportunity to introduce you guys to the latest project in the shop. A 1985 Kawasaki 750 Turbo. They only made this motorcycle for 2 years, 84 and 85. It's a 750cc inline 4, fuel injected, which was very rare at that time. They weren't using fuel injection on motorcycles up to this point, and turbocharged. All the major manufacturers, Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Kawasaki, around the same time, were building turbo bikes to try to make a small displacement bike run like a big block 1000 or 1100cc motorcycle. They were not extremely successful. Fuel injection was extremely new back then. The turbochargers were never put on a motorcycle, and this combination scared the public. Mechanics didn't know how to work on it, and just all around it was a little bit ahead of its time. The Kawasaki Turbo in particular was the fastest of the turbos. The Suzuki probably had the best handling of the turbos, and the Honda kind of just were turbos for the sake of having turbos. The Yamaha, they used their Seika model, and they used a different approach. They used carburetors instead of fuel injection. All the rest used fuel injection. This particular bike is pretty much bone stock. As you can see, it even still has the stock exhaust, turn signals, seat, everything. It has not been big bored like a lot of people do. This bike is pretty much all standard. It's in extremely good shape. I've had this bike for quite a while. I ride it frequently. Has a monoshock rear suspension. Cosmetically, it's in extremely good condition. Here's the fuel injection. That's the throttle position sensor. There you can see the fuel injectors back in there. Bike runs extremely well. Here you can see the tiny turbo. It's a Hitachi. I have had to have the turbo rebuilt. So the turbo has been rebuilt. There you can get a better view of it. So as you can see, the headers leave the head and dump right into the turbo. And then the turbo feeds up through here, back up into the intake. You can see here's your turbo pipe. Comes into your air box and forces air in. And then out the other side, you can see here it leaves the turbo. You might not be able to see all that well, but it goes into an H pipe that then feeds out in the dual mufflers. Okay, 5-speed manual transmission. Bike runs great. I ride it rather frequently. It's a lot of fun to ride. It's extremely fast when the turbo kicks in. Where a lot of guys have gotten themselves in trouble with these bikes over the years is that, as most early 80s turbos, whether it was in a car or motorcycle or what have you, they kind of turn on like light switches. Lots of turbo lag. Turbo won't really spool up until about between 4,000 and 4,500 RPM. And then it's bam, all the power right now. And if you're not paying attention to what you're doing and you're leaned over into a corner when the turbo spools up quick, well, it's going to throw the back end out and you're going down. And that's what happened to a lot of these bikes. Okay. What we're going to do on this bike is we're going to remove the front end. The fork seals need to be replaced. I currently have basically no front suspension. I hit even the slightest bump and they bottom out. So I figured this would be a good thing to show on a video. We'll pull the front end off, we'll pull the forks apart, and we'll put new seals and rebuild the forks. So stay tuned. This is going to be our next project. So the first thing we're going to have to do here is remove the brakes, the front wheel, and the front fender in order to get the forks off. So as you can see, I have the bike up in my lift, pulled in backwards, so the rear tire is in the vise. I have a ratchet strap to help keep it up straight. What I've done to get the front wheel up in the air is I have a jack with a block of wood placed on a nice convenient place there on the engine. So this bike has what they call anti-dive, which is attached to the brake lines. So we're going to have to remove the anti-dive system, the brake calipers, and this junction block. And we're going to let that hang there. And we have to do the same thing on this side. We're going to remove the caliper, the anti-dive. I don't want to have to mess with the brakes if it's not necessary. So I'm not going to drain anything. The brakes have been bled recently, so I don't want to have to do that again. So we're going to remove these, let them hang, and then we're going to take the front wheel off. Okay. We got one 19 millimeter nut here to take off, and we will hold this part of the axle with a screwdriver through the hole from twisting, and we should be able to get that all off. Start by jacking the front wheel up in the air. I get myself a little bit of clearance here. All right, it's almost up, so make my life a little bit easier here. Keep some weight on the front wheel. We'll take these front calipers off. There's how long 14 millimeter bolts. Wiggle that off. I like to always put the bolts back in just so I can keep track of them a little bit better. So we'll just start these guys back in here. I'll quick take the two bolts out of the other caliper. All right. Next, I think what I want to do, there's two 5 millimeter Allen bolts to hold this junction block to the fork. So we're going to take this off, take these out. All right, so the junction block is loose. Can't really put these bolts back yet, so we'll just set them aside. And it's the same here for the anti-dive unit, 5 millimeter Allens. Oops, and we're losing a little bit of oil. Luckily, there wasn't a lot of fork oil in this bike anymore. Catch the runner there. All right. Now that whole system is loose. So when I take the front wheel out, I'll be able to get the fork legs out from all this. And I will do the other side. I don't think you need to watch me do both sides. I'll do the other side and I'll bring you back on when I'm done. All right, so I have the other caliper and the anti-dive unit off, and that side is draining as well. Now, you'll notice on both of these forks, they do actually have drain screws on both sides that I could have taken out to drain out whatever was left of fork oil. But I knew I had to remove all this stuff anyway. It was going to drain out through there. So, you know, one half does it another. You could have done it either way. These are going to sit here and drain for a little bit, whatever fork oil was left in them. There wasn't much. You could tell by riding the bike. So now we're ready to remove the front wheel. So let me jack this up in the air a little more. Just enough to get the wheel off the ground. One 19mm nut on this side. And this side actually has a 12mm nut and bolt that keeps the axle in place. You have to loosen that. Now we should be able to knock the axle loose. Grab myself a nice little dead blow hammer. There goes the axle. See a screwdriver to hold back here, and I can pull it the rest of the way out. Okay, axle is out. Spacer fell out the other side. Speedometer drive on this side. Perfect. And there's your front wheel. Set that off to the side. Retrieve my spacer. Clean that up later. And for now, I'm just going to let these forks sit here and drain. And next time you see me, we will start with removing the forks. All right, so one of the last things we really need to do is to get this front fender out of the way. There's two 12mm bolts on both sides. They're going to hold the front fender in. Quickly remove these. inside. One of the things I forgot to tell you guys, and you might want to know, is on the inside of these anti-dive units, there are 2 O-rings. Okay, try not to lose them unless you're going to replace them. These weren't leaking, so I'm probably not going to replace them. In fact, I think I've replaced them in the past because they were leaking. So, but watch, there's two of them, top and bottom, to cover the holes. So when you take them off, they might fall out of the anti-dive units. And also, I already previously removed the belly pan. I do have the belly pan sitting over in the corner. It's one of the things that's always missing on these bikes. So now, the trick is you squeeze the fender. It's plastic. And get it out without scratching anything. Alright, there we go. Front fender out. Now we'll put it over here someplace safe. Now in order to remove the forks, what you have, upper and lower triple clamps. So on here you have a 10mm Allen. So we're going to loosen this. Okay, and up top, we have a 12mm nut and bolt. So we'll loosen that. Do not need a wrench to hold the nut, so we'll get this loose. Okay, that's good and loose. Now let's see if this will just pull out. It may or may not. All right, so let me start off by apologizing there, guys. I got a little bit ahead of myself. When you work on so many bikes, every once in a while you forget a couple things. But in order to get the front forks off, you have to come up top. Okay, here you can see the top of the forks. There's a little rubber cap I have to remove. And under this little rubber cap, this is like a big nut. And in the center will be an Allen, where you can put a 17mm Allen, which will undo this big cap, okay? And that will allow me then to pull the forks out. Okay, I have to do that on both sides. All right, so we'll do that now. Get your flat blade screwdriver. Carefully pull up on that plastic cap. Okay, so here's our plastic cap. I pre-loosened, because these things can be really tight sometimes, they haven't been out for a while. I have this multi-tool, it's really for axles, but it's a 17mm. I use my impact gun to break it loose. And then, because these things get stuck up in here for years without being removed, this also holds on your clip-ons. What I like to do is slowly remove it a little bit at a time, and then gently tap down, which will help release the front fork. And just work it out a little bit at a time here. Fork's starting to turn, so it'll probably come out all on its own. That big cap is free. So here's the big cap that holds the fork on. Also provides some pre-tensioning for the spring. And then this clip-on should stay there. And then with any luck, they never want to just come out. So close. All right, so I'm going to pull this bolt out the rest of the way. It's just a clamping bolt. And then we'll see if it's the top or the bottom that's holding up. I have a nice big screwdriver here. I can pry this open a little bit. You might have to pry open the bottom a little bit. There it comes. Okay, it's clear of the top triple clamp. Doing forks is definitely a messy job. You will make a mess, you will get oil everywhere. But it's not a difficult job. There it is. Now this also had a clamp around it to hold the cables in place, so I'll have to put that back. All right, there's your front fork removed. Now we'll do the same thing to the other side, and then I'll let these drain a little bit more. And next time you see me, we'll be taking them apart. Get out to the shop and try to work on something today.